We're going to start with that news that we told you about Tipperary hurling. It is the news that Liam Sheedy is back in the frame and it looks like he's going to get the gig. He's going to become the next Tipperary hurling manager, the second coming, writes John Fogarty here. Sheedy in line for Tipp return, and the full story inside. He's been 2010. He obviously stepped away after Tipperary had won the All-Ireland. Surprisingly so at that stage, John, he was just a month after they'd won the All-Ireland final. But it seems like the hunger is back. He had made some comments on the Sunday game, I think it was actually, after the news had sort of filtered down that there was a vacancy, sort of saying that, look, inevitably I'm going to get linked with it and Nicky English is going to get linked with it, as John Fogarty writes. But as he said, whoever takes it on will need to have a bit more spare time than I have. He is a busy man professionally, and he was obviously a guy who had his name in the hat as well for the top job at the GEA, and that didn't go his way. But feeling still a young man, not yet 49, that he has something left to offer here.
Yeah, so he did a great job, Adrian, between, I think, 2008 and 2010. They won a Munster title in their first season. He brought a lot of discipline to Tipperary. He had a great backroom staff, Eamon O'Shea and Michael Ryan, of course, who led Tipperary to the 2016 Liam McCarthy Cup. And Willie Maher and Liam Cahill were highly touted for the role. Liam's done a great job, won the Under-21 All-Ireland. But Liam Sheedy is a winner, a proven winner with Tipperary. Famously denied Kilkenny that 5 in a row in 2010, Lark Orbert scoring a hat-trick in the All-Ireland final. But what I remember from his tenure is he brought a structure and a discipline to the Tipperary setup, and Eamon O'Shea came in as a coach. Right. And there's also, speculation this morning that if Liam does take over, that Eamon O'Shea could be back involved, and Eamon O'Shea is a great hurling coach. So there must be a feeling, maybe within Liam, if this is true and he is taking over, that Tipperary need to get back to the top table, because there's still a lot of talent in there. There's like the likes of Seamus Callanan, Bubbles O'Dwyer, Noel McGrath, top players for Tipperary, Porrick Marr. And with hurling maybe on a bit of a level playing field with Limerick, Galway, Clare, Cork, Waterford, all these teams pretty much at the same level. I think the feeling would be that only 2 years ago Tipperary were extremely impressive All-Ireland winners. They came through a very difficult Munster Championship. They beat Cork and Kilkenny very impressively in the final, and Kilkenny haven't really been the same team since. But it just hasn't worked out since then. Yeah. And maybe Liam, with his track record, is the man to lead them back up to the top table, because the talent is definitely there. Yeah. And they were very close against Galway last year. I mean, Joe Canyon had to win it in the last buck of the game, and that's how close they were.
Yeah.
So
the levelling out of the hurling championship, I think if I was Liam Sheedy, I could easily see why he'd be tempted back by that. And
Clare only got them in the last couple of minutes. The round robin could have gone in different ways this year. Tipperary have a lot of talent. They brought Cork to a draw. Of course, we just talked about the under-21s there. So they're a county that always is there or thereabouts. They've got difficulty with retaining All-Irelands. Haven't done it since the 60s. But Liam Sheedy's got the track record, and if he's interested, and if what the Irish Independent, as well as the Examiner, is saying is true today, I think it'd be a very good appointment and a very exciting appointment for the Port Row man to return to the Premier.
Yeah, there'll be some carryover of players, obviously, but not a huge amount, I would think, from his time previously. And I know, having done a lengthy session with Owen Kelly and Lark Orbert at one point, and down in Tipp, a large majority of it spent talking about Liam Sheedy and what he was bringing to the party in life, sort of post-Babs as it was at the time, and the terms that they speak about him in are incredible. The discipline and the structure that you're talking about that he brought to it, but the buy-in as well was the thing that really struck me, that fellas were sort of willing to kind of do that Gerlach Nan style training for him if that's what he required, that they trusted him and they sort of wanted to get behind him, and that will be the sort of thing you assume that when he it seems like at this point when he comes back in, that he's going to get that county behind him.
Tipperary don't win that many All-Irelands. They won 89, 91, 2001 with Nicky English, and then it was until 2010 with Liam, and they only won one since with Michael Ryan, who was part of Liam's team. So they don't win that many. I think because they've had so many brilliant battles with Kilkenny in the last decade or decade and a half, we might have thought that they've won more than they have, but they haven't. And to get back to the top table and have that consistency, I think, is what Tipperary people want to see. And I think Liam might be the man to do that, based on the excellent track record.
Yeah, because even though, like as you say, they have been sort of thereabouts, they've almost fallen off the conversation.
Yeah, and that's what the round robin can do, though. Yeah. The round robin in Munster, two teams are gone, like that. Waterford and Tipperary. Waterford reached the final last year. Tipperary won the previous year, not even in the conversation. So that's the way it can go, and that'll be the way again next year.
And an interesting development too as well from Owen Cormac here alongside it, just that it looks like GEA Now, which is an online platform for generally up to this point for sort of roundups and clips and archive footage and highlights and that sort of thing. It looks like it might be about to start showing live games. So I guess anybody who's been a student of the game over the last little while would have felt that maybe that was sort of where things were headed. There were quotes from Peter McKenna. And we shall see how all that pans out. As you mentioned, John, the Liam Sheedy story is picked up in the Irish Independent as well. Here this morning, it's Michael Verney who's got this story. Sheedy set for stunning Tipp return, and as you say, all the links about an Eamon O'Shea, the dream team being back, I suppose, is probably the way to put it there. And a shot of Pedro last night in Chelsea's winning start to the Europa League favourites for the tournament as well. Drugs and Sport, Tracy, credibility of WADA has been called into question. John Tracy has asked some pretty tough questions of WADA. This is good to see that an Irish administrator, a guy that at the very top of that particular tree, is sort of calling the Russians to account here. They've been allowed back in by the World Anti-Doping Agency, who haven't given any great detail about why they've sort of overturned this ban, and John Tracy's calling them out over it. I mean, I think it's a positive development that we would ask questions about these things and interrogate it in a way that it deserves to be. Well,
WADA has only been 19 years in existence, and it was one of the biggest proponents of a ban at the Olympic Games in Rio for these Russian athletes, and now it's caved. It seems under pressure. It's part funded by the IOC and part funded by government. You have to think there might be geopolitical pressure here. I think the assurances that they were given were about accepting the McLaren report, Richard McLaren's report, that there was state-sponsored doping around Sochi, and there was over 1,000 athletes guilty of that, and also that they'd be able to get into the labs and see what they've been doing. But how strictly will these new investigations be enforced? And also, what does it say about any country that wants to engage in state-sponsored doping, that after 3 years it'll be wiped out and you'll be back to the table? And it's huge implications for the IAAF and for the Paralympics, because they've been probably the strongest organisations against Russia. I think with only 19 Russian athletes were involved in the World Athletic Championship last year. But it's almost just saying, you know what, we think Russia giving us assurances, everything is okay now, and let's just start again. And it doesn't really bode that well for Tokyo. And once again, I watched 9.79, which is this movie about the 1988 100 metres men's final, which Ben Johnson won, of course, was stripped immediately because he was taking steroids, which I think he'd been doing for years. And this is 30 years ago. And it was still a cloud over sport, the issue of doping, and in anything based on speed and endurance, unfortunately, it just seems to permeate it into the sport, and you just can't get rid of it. No. And this does not inspire confidence. So fair play to John Delaney for coming out, John Tracy, rather. Yeah, Sport Ireland. Freudian slip there for coming out. Chief exec, yeah. No, absolutely. We had Ben Johnson over at a thing in Trinity College a couple of years ago. He was speaking at an event we had, and part of a broadcast we had, and he has a massive sort of conspiracy theory about that entire thing. He accepts that he took drugs. He just says he didn't take what he was alleged to have taken, and he said there's a lot of... He was between sportswear brands at the time, had moved to a new sportswear brand, and had some sort of a conspiracy about what the other sportswear brand had sort of done to his career or whatever. It was... in that documentary there's a huge amount of an African river, which is denial. Huge amount of that. Yeah. That exists still to this day. There we go. That's the Munster allaying Earl's injury fears as well. He's not part of the Munster squad for the game against Cardiff this weekend. But Johan van Graan says he's fine. Everything will be all right on the night. There are those two newspapers. The Irish Daily Mail, meanwhile, it's treachery. Russia's return from drugs ban is met with fury. That's just more on that story we've been discussing. Well, that was easy. A picture of Danny Welbeck and Patrick Aubameyang after Arsenal's 4-2 thumping of Vorskla. Poor crowd
last night, was there? Yeah,
a lot of empty seats. So I wonder, is football reaching a tipping point? I read an article about this during the week about police figures not being in line with the official figures that are given at Premier League games and other games, that there might be season tickets that are not used, and there might be like corporate tickets or free tickets that are unsold or not used, and then you have a disparity. Then Manchester United is as purely 100%, so it was in line. But with other clubs like Manchester City, Arsenal being another one of them, it's not. It might say that it's 95%. It might only be 85% of the actual attendance. So there could be a tipping point with the saturation of television, with the amount of just the cost of it. And if you're an Arsenal fan, do you want to be going to Europa League games at this stage of the season?
And you wonder also, John, how much it matters anymore in that sport, particularly how many people are at the ground. Like, given the levels of funding that's available from TV money specifically, that in terms of the finances of a club, I'm not saying it's insignificant, but it's certainly in terms of the proportion of money that used to come into a club versus what comes in now via merchandise and TV money, it must be incremental at this point. So, certainly more insignificant. So, we shall see on that. Just one other interesting story from the Irish Daily Mail there this morning by Michael Clifford. Players Chief accuses GAA of double standards. This is the Club Players Association, and Michael Brodie, its chairman, saying that there's been somewhat of an about turn by the GAA and specifically the president, John Horan. So this is just about the point that the fixture list clearly fixed the fixtures is the CPA's mantra. And they say that the CPA have accused GAA chiefs of taking a contradictory position by planning for a new championship, i.e. a second-tier championship, which could be introduced by 2021. And that goes counter, writes Michael Clifford, to what the GAA had said previously about trying to implement the new system, the new structure that had been in, give it some time to sort of bed in, give it a little bit of sort of breathing space and then see where it goes from there. John Horan sort of reveals here in a press conference yesterday that this was something that had been mooted some years back and then actually was supposed to, I think, be introduced to Congress and then didn't quite, got sort of pulled at the last minute. But he says of a recent Central Council meeting, we put it to the floor for just a straw poll opinion. This is about a tiered championship, so a second tier. Put it to the floor for just a straw poll opinion. Every hand went up. Everybody was of the view that it should happen. I mean, whatever about the CPA's anger about it happening or not, it makes infinite sense that this thing would just happen finally, because and there's loads of sense spoken by John Horan in the article about the structure of it and how it would still mean that all 32 teams would enter the championship with the possibility of winning Sam Maguire every year. And that's sort of the crux of the matter for a lot of teams. When you hear players from the various, the second tier counties speak, they will say, well, we don't want to enter a competition where we don't think we have the opportunity to win Sam Maguire. So that opportunity always remains open for every county at the start of the year, and at some point closes off to just 16 teams. I think that makes infinite sense. They're talking about an end of year All-Stars tour, so again you've got that. They're talking about holding it as the curtain raiser, so
instead of the minor. So the minor tickets would go to
putting that in for the All-Ireland final.
Secondary counties.
I mean, it makes absolute sense now. I think that Sean Kelly had a stab at it in his time some years ago, and probably the ground is clear now to have a proper go at this thing. And I do believe that sort of asking individual counties and players if this is something they want to do, they're never going to say yes to it. So it probably just needs to be bulldozed on in, however that happens.
Well, first of all, on the current structures in GA is a 3-year trial for the round robin, for example, in hurling. They finished the All-Irelands earlier. September is now free for club games. April is meant to be free for club games, although how successful that has been is open to conjecture. But this is a 3-year trial, and I think the GAA have moved towards accommodating the club game, which needs to be done as the lifeblood of the association more than it has been. So let's just see what the proposals are. Let's just see what the timelines are and how these things can run off in tandem. But just don't call it a silly name. Just don't call it the second tier championship is a silly name for a cup or something like that. Just call it like the All Ireland B Championship, or just give it a degree of regality.
I would agree with you. I think actually anything to do with B or second tier or anything that suggests sort of
some name.
They can give it
whatever cup.
Plenty of legends over the years that they can the Tommy Markhams and the Laurie Mara Cups and all that sort of thing. They'll definitely be able to come up with something that puts a bit of fire under it. But I mean, I think that it's an infinitely wise thing to do.
Well, I think it would be great to see 82,000 people, and by say maybe 10 to 15,000 of them from second-tier counties at All-Ireland final day. I think that would be exciting. And I think if you're running off these games to get, because we know that for semi-finals at Croke Park, you don't have a full stadium. So if you had that, properly marketed, and it would have to be properly marketed, that if, say, you were doing press briefings on the week, you'd have a press briefing for the curtain raiser and the main game. And these things will be all scheduled and given as much time as possible. But look, it's all in the future. And I think that the GA, they're being brave in recent years. Pork Duffy was brave. It's a 3-year trial for the hurling. I don't personally agree with the calendar. I think it's too squeezed. I think we're giving away, if you're a GA fan, attention to rugby and soccer in September. They've got a free rein now. It actually, I think, helped Limerick because there wasn't that much hype as there would have been previously 20 years ago around Limerick's All-Ireland run. And I think that actually helped Limerick on August the 19th. But to me, it's a little bit too squeezed, but I think the round-robin system has been a great success. And there's nothing wrong in an association that's over 125 years old with trialling things 3 years at a time. It's not, Gaelic football in the 1970s, 1980s was about Kerry playing semi-finals and winning finals, maybe against the Dubs, or the Dubs would beat them. And there wasn't that much excitement around it.
I'd bring it in straight away, John. That'd be my view. I'd get this in straight away. I know it's a labyrinthine organisation by its very nature, and it takes time to get things done. I'd go for it straight away. We do have some news that's just coming into us here. It's a statement from the Connacht Council in relation to the suspended Carnacon players. So this has come into us this morning. We'll give you a bit of a look at this on screen as well as we sort of pick through it here. It's just coming in as news to us as well. So the statement reads, "To it may concern the above appeal, which was the Mayo LGFA County Board's appeal versus Connacht LGFA appeals committees. The above appeal was heard at an emergency meeting of the Connacht Ladies Gaelic Football Council. This was on the 18th of September at the GA Centre in Beacon. Having considered the information presented to the meeting by Mayo County Board, the Connacht's Appeal Committee and the Carnacon Club, under the provisions of Rule 298 of the LGFA Official Guide 2016, it states the rule here: members' clubs, divisional and county boards and provincial councils have the right of objection or appeal against the decisions of higher bodies. The committee, board or council to whom the objection or the appeal is made shall have the power to award games, review or impose penalties, etc., 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 as they deem necessary." So the following are the decisions of the council, and this is the crucial bit now. Here, number one, we hereby uphold the decision made by the Connacht's Appeal Committee to allow Carnacon to compete in the Mayo Championship for the remainder of the 28th season. So Carnacon remain in. Number two, we impose a fine of €500 on the Carnacon Club, pursuant to the rule that states each competing club, school, college, county, etc. shall be responsible for the conduct of its members and followers. So the responsibility of conduct is the takeaway from that, as they impose a €500 fine. And you know where this is going. So in point 3, we impose a month's suspension on the 8 Mayo County players from the Carnacon Club, pursuant to the rule that states any member of the association found guilty of conduct calculated to bring the association into disrepute shall be liable to expulsion or suspension by the committee, board or council concerned. And it names out the 8 players that are involved there: Martha Carter, Marie Corbett, Amy Dowling, Darren Hughes, Sive Larkin, Fiona McHale, Cora Staunton and Saoirse Walsh. Suspensions coming into effect from the date of the hearing, which, as I said, was on the 18th September. All parties have a right to appeal the decisions. So that is it. Just to confirm that it's been confirmed. One other piece of news here as well for you. It's been confirmed to us this morning that the Carnacon Club are going to appeal the Connacht Council's decision for that fine, and the avenue was open to them. So they are going to make that appeal, and we shall see how all that pans out.
No winners.
The saga continues.
No winners.
The short story from this. Grant, any more developments on that, we'll bring them to you as we get them. Just one bit more from me here. It's the Racing Post this morning. It's Wigan against Bristol City as they tend to do the championship at the back page this morning. 7:45 kickoff. John, what have you got?
Well, the Irish Star, Poch's axe to grind. Spurs boss fears the chop. Absolute nonsense story. Not a story. He signed a 5-year deal. Mauricio Pochettino admits he could be sacked next week. Well, I could be the Tottenham manager next week. It's not going to happen. That's not a story. So that's the Star. GA yet to receive FAI bid contact. This is more of a story from Paul Lennon. This, of course, is around the potential World Cup bid involving the Republic of Ireland in 2030, with England looking to bid. Philly wants to get fiscal, maybe talk about this ESRI report in the 31 hours. What can we look at in terms of helping players out there?
I'm not that surprised actually that the FAI haven't been in touch with Croke Park about. It's literally just happened.
It's going to take time. It's a long time away.
It's like, the news is just broken. It's far too early for them to be in any conversations.
The Mirror, humbled Fernandinho. We will have more humility after our Lyon disaster. And traumatised. Pochettino, our bad run has hit the players hard. And if it goes on, I could get sacked. He's not going to get sacked. The Irish Times, always interesting with a different angle on a Friday. Gavin Cummiskey profiling the Rugby World Cup contenders with a year to go. I think just a year, was it yesterday? To the start of the 2019 Rugby World Cup in Japan. We were so excited about it, given Ireland are ranked second in the world.
Gavin giving Ireland a shake there.
He's given Ireland a third ranking behind New Zealand and South Africa.
Right.
Natural disasters could be a real threat in Japan. There have been 3 major tropical cyclones per year hitting the country's main islands in September. Also talking about tattoos associated with the mafia in Japan. Cover up your tattoos. I don't have any now, and I won't be over there either, so don't worry, folks. So that's in terms of the Irish Times. And we'll go into a couple of in-depth stories here in a moment. Russia white flag sparks fury. This is The Guardian. WADA has cast aside its responsibilities to clean athletes, fans and those who work tirelessly for clean sport. So that's The Guardian back page. But what I was more interested in was Jonathan Wilson, Adrian, about Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. Talking about their defeat to Lyon during the week in the Champions League. Twice as many more shots as their opponents. Not the worst sign if they're not quite at their best yet. I think with De Bruyne to come back, that's a fair point. But this is the paradox. There are rare occasions when it can feel a little mannered, when the very purity of the style seems to make it vulnerable, just as pedigree dogs are more susceptible to disease. That's why Johan Cruyff brought in Hristo Stoichkov to Barcelona to add the mala leche, literally the bad milk, but more idiomatically, toughness, ruthlessness, capacity for improvisation. He felt the side were lacking. So he's maybe making comparisons with Manchester City. When things go wrong, there's nobody there to grab a game and yank it back on course. Jonathan Wilson in The Guardian on that today.
They were supposed to have all these new sort of tactics, Manchester City, that nobody knew about outside of a very sort of crack team. I also wasn't aware that pedigree dogs were more susceptible to...
No, I don't have one. I had a Jack Russell, and he's long gone. So... maybe been in the back garden too long, gave him illnesses. But James Lawton also on Guardiola. City's European failings slow Pep's rise to true greatness. Wait for further Champions League glory. 2011 was the last time, Adrian, has the potential to tarnish Guardiola's legacy. What you must begin to wonder is if, even at the relatively youthful age of 47, Guardiola has done the best of his work, already hit the extremes of his talent. That last season's Premier League tour de force created expectations which flew beyond the wilder realities of top European games. So, challenging article by James Lawton on Guardiola. And then Spurs... Humiliated Lloris feels mental pain with injury. He's got a thigh injury at the moment and he's out after that drink driving ban. So yet to return to training. They're playing Brighton at the weekend, Spurs, and under obviously a degree of scrutiny at the moment. This is a bizarre story that emerged yesterday. Construction news about the Tottenham Stadium, which they're hoping to get finished in January. There were people off their heads. This is the workers at the stadium. This claim in this publication, drinking cans first thing in the morning before going on site and snorting coke in the toilets. Mace spokesman, Mace are the people in charge of the construction. They strongly deny the allegations, saying any suggestion that our rigorous standards around best practice or drugs and alcohol had been broken would be taken extremely seriously. We carry out regular random drugs and alcohol testing to ensure our rules are enforced throughout the supply chain. But Tottenham just seems to be a little bit of a club that nothing is going right for at the moment.
That's bizarre in the extreme, it has to be said.